Hello and welcome to Big Ideas Live. Today at this Sky News special event, we are hoping to answer one really big question. Who owns the future? Well, welcome and come on in, because to do that today, we have invited the very best of business leaders in science and technology, some of the biggest thinkers and innovators. We've got the UK Atomic Energy Authority here. And Spot the dog. I've got a feeling he is going to be taking centre stage and steal a lot of the limelight. There he is. More about Spot the dog later. And of course, we've got our award-winning team of Sky News journalists on hand as well. Well, what a week it's been for big tech, the likes of Meta and Twitter. Could be a big day for Twitter today. With that in mind, we're asking the question, what happens next to big tech companies? We're also going to be talking about space. Space is big business, but do we really need to keep sending people up into space and spending for that matter? And plus, we're talking about artificial intelligence. Should these huge advances in AI be a concern, or actually should they be celebrated? We're going to be showcasing so much great technology here today as well at Big Ideas Live. All the technology that's helping us make big leaps forward in science, in sport, and in dating. And we'll be considering the question about what the UK has to do to become a science and technology superpower. So some big questions there, and big questions, of course, need big ideas. And who better to get the ball rolling than our Sky News science and technology team?
The scientists have done it, and they've used the virus itself to perform a kind of biological jiu-jitsu to turn the virus on itself in the form of a vaccine.
The first live Omicron variant. Now they've got the sample, they can grow it up, infect human cells with it in this laboratory.
How long will it be until the physical and digital collide and the online world is as tangible as this?
Look, no hands. Speak to the automotive industry and they'll tell you that the technology for automated driving is effectively already here.
We're in a Bitcoin boom, and this is the frontier.
A visible military campaign against Islamic State was mixed with the more covert one, with cyber spies targeting the group's ability to use phones and other devices to communicate.
These British weapons are vital for Ukraine, giving troops the ability to hit valuable Russian targets at a distance with precision.
And this water is rain that has fallen on the soil, come through the rock. And as you can see, it's been so dry, there really isn't much of it.
Delaying climate action will simply dial up the heat.
Are you feeling that there's still real anger from developing nations that wealthy nations are not doing enough?
Sure, I think that it's understandable.
This is a traditional way of making steel, burning coal and emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. But that is on the cusp of changing. When green steel becomes commercially available in a few years' time, it will cost more.
If you're in doubt about how significant these new images are, I wish you could be in this room. Already, just with these first 5 images, we've seen things we've never seen before.
So this is a mock-up of Columbus, which is the European laboratory on board the space station.
Go, Jeff, go, Mark, go, Wally, go, Oliver. You are going to space.
Just what on earth happens next to big tech companies, particularly companies like Meta and Twitter? Well, hopefully Sky Technology correspondent Roland Manthorpe and his guests can answer that next question. They're chatting amongst themselves already, so they're well prepped. Roland, over to you.
Thanks, SJ. What happens next? The answer to that question has not felt this uncertain for a long time, because it has truly been a tumultuous, frankly, at times shocking period in tech over the last few weeks. It feels as if decades have passed in mere days. And I want to start by reflecting that and talking about that with the most brilliant panel. We have over here Cory Doctorow, one of the generation's great science fiction writers, a blogger, an activist, and someone who knows his software. A long time ago, he founded a peer-to-peer networking company. We also have Amber Gadda, a serial Web3 entrepreneur. What does Web3 mean? Well, we'll talk about that later. And also exec chair at Decentralize, the first in real life and metaverse music festival. And hopefully, behind us, in the screen, it's working. In the screen, we have Chris Kelly, and now an investor who was the 25th employee at Facebook, as it was known then, where he was head of privacy. So a really fantastic panel to discuss this question, what comes next? I want to start by asking you all the same question. In the last few weeks, what has surprised or shocked you most? Of all the things that have happened, what has truly surprised you? Chris, what about you? What was completely unexpected of all the things that have happened?
I mean, I think that the radical change inside Twitter is probably the biggest surprise of the week, and the fact that it would go from it's a central town square for the world to will it work tomorrow? It's a pretty big set of questions, and I think it probably will certainly work tomorrow. I think it's still going to be an impressive town square for the world, but the massive cutbacks and the sort of chainsaw that Elon Musk has taken to the company it doesn't bode well for its future.
What about you? What's surprised or shocked you? I mean, you must have been pretty shocked when FTX, for those who don't know, FTX is a cryptocurrency exchange, a little like a bank. This is not a good analogy, but a little like a bank for cryptocurrencies. Why do cryptocurrencies, which are meant to be totally decentralized, have things like banks? Why indeed? But anyway, this entity has completely imploded in the most dramatic fashion in the last few weeks. And as someone who works in this space, I mean, I was shocked. You must have been stunned.
What is really, really frustrating for me and other people in this space is that what we saw in crypto, especially in centralized, decentralized finance, is that people are making the same mistakes that have led to the financial crisis of 2008. Like, the same mistake. It's like you did not learn for the mistake of your older brothers and older sisters. And what we saw in FTX and in other lenders, CDFI lenders, is that there's no counterparty risk management, no internal controls. And basically, if the regulations that were created after the financial crisis of 2008 to limit the power of the banks, the power of the hedge fund, and create more transparency in the system were applied to these crypto companies, we would have had the same fiasco, but it would have been less shocking.
You've been, a prominent and very strong critic of big tech and crypto over the years. Were you surprised? Were you all the same? Were you shocked at what just happened?
So I think that big tech's hype machine wants us to think that they're evil geniuses. They want us to think that they've figured out how to hack our dopamine loops and make addictive technology. But when you look really closely at what they do, they just have monopolies, right? What they've got is like a platform that they got all the people that you love and care about and want to transact with or go on a date with, and they've locked them into a silo. And so, what they've done is use access to the capital markets to build these big impregnable silos to buy everyone who wants to compete with them. Mark Zuckerberg gets up in the middle of the night and sends an email to his CFO saying, young people hate Facebook, they like Instagram, we have to buy Instagram because, quote, it is better to buy than to compete. Right? This is the kind of thing you absolutely don't want to put in writing. It's like saying, let's do a murder and premeditate it and make sure that we premeditate it because we know murder is wrong. Right? It's just not something you want to write down.
But on the recent events, I feel like we've gone all the way back to MySpace.
The thing that surprised me was how quickly this thing that we knew could happen, but which it seemed like the laws of gravity had been suspended for a decade. And it seems like very quickly people are going, I don't need Twitter and Facebook as much as I used to think I needed them. And now that the people I love are leaving, maybe I won't spend as much time. I know that Twitter views are up, but I think they're up in the same way that like people crowding around a burning building to watch it go down.
For those of you who don't know, Mark Zuckerberg has invested, I think it is $36 billion in his dream of a virtual reality world, the metaverse, and so far produced, not a lot. So it's a very expensive bet, and he's betting the whole company on it. Corey, yes or no, do you believe that we will have a metaverse?
I think it's nonsense. I think it was created to distract us from Mark Zuckerberg's inability to have a second good idea. And so he's just trying to conjure something into existence. He's done this once before. You remember the pivot to video, where he convinced every media company in the world to waste billions by lying to them about how many videos people were watching? Now he's doing it by lying to them about the fact that we all want to be legless, low-polygon cartoon characters.
Okay.
But it all amounts to the same thing.
Second now.
Thank you. Second lightning question. Chris, will Twitter exist in a year, yes or no? Twitter, the platform, the service?
Yes.
Amber, will Twitter exist?
It will, but it may be a shell of its former self.
Okay, Amber, you...
I agree. The new subscription model is not going to please a lot of people around.
So you think it will exist, but people won't be happy with it?
It will exist, but you will have less users, that's for sure.
Corey, you?
Yeah, the future composts the past. It's not going away. You know, you can still get a LiveJournal account. Of course, we'll still have Twitter. Whether or not it matters is the important question.
So let's get another question. I think Melanie's in the audience has got a question. Ah, there you are. Thanks. If you could just wait for the mic to come round.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was wondering, to what extent do you think the spread of fake news and increasing political polarization has contributed to the loss of users from platforms such as Twitter, and how can this be combated?
I wanted to ask, I mean, you were at Facebook very early. You were global legal counsel, I think it was, effectively the head lawyer. I mean, how much of a role did questions of truth and misinformation and disinformation play in the discussions while you were there?
We had to deal with them all the time. I mean, we saw the initial aspects of misinformation campaigns sort of being built around elections as early as 2006 and 2008. We had actually done a number of projects to try to increase civic engagement on the platform at that time. And we certainly saw people try to use misinformation to manipulate elections early on at that phase and fought against it.
Hang on, I'm sorry, I've just got to pick this up because, Chris, you just said that you saw manipulation of elections from 2006, but Mark Zuckerberg has admitted that he didn't really take this seriously until 2016. I mean, what happened in the intervening 10 years?
The scale changed, and there were quite a number of folks who I had left at that point actually to engage in politics on my own. But we had definitely seen some attempts at electoral misinformation in the earlier races.
Okay, thank you to my fantastic panel, Chris Kelly, Amber Gadda, and Corey Doctorow.
Thanks so much.
And thank you all for watching and contributing. May the argument begin. SJ, over to you.
Plenty going on around the stages today. I'm trying to keep my voice down because I don't want to interrupt the experience of the two people behind me who are here at our tree hugger stand. Now, this is incredible. It's entering a tree trunk and exploring inside the tree. You can walk in and out. You can explore the world of trees and the forest. These guys have been here for at least 15, 20 minutes. And there's a massive queue to come and have a go at this today. Roland actually said this is the best thing he has ever experienced. And that says a lot coming from our technology correspondent. So that is the tree hugger stand here, just one of many innovation stands that we have here at Big Ideas Live. Plenty more panels coming up for you as well. In the future stage, which is just to my left, Thomas Moore, our science correspondent, is going to be talking about the advance of technology and in particular AI in the field of medicine. And on the main stage, the festival stage, we'll be talking about technology in the battlefield and how it's changing warfare. That's with our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, and special guests.
Welcome to this panel on cyber warfare and how technology is changing the battlefield. And I'm joined by an expert panel of people. First of all, we've got Sarah Armstrong-Smith, who is the Chief Security Advisor in Europe for Microsoft, which plays a key role in cybersecurity. We've also got Nigel Inkster, who is an expert, a senior advisor at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, looking at cybersecurity and China. And before that, he had a long and distinguished career at Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, MI6. And last but definitely not least, we have Sally Walker, who spent about 25 years in national security, ending up as Director of Cyber at GCHQ, and she led the effort to create the National Cyber Force, which is a fundamental part now of UK cybersecurity, both offensively and defensively. We're also going to be joined by a minister from Ukraine in a few minutes. But I thought to start off with, given that Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, is so current in our minds, and cyber has played such a fundamental role in that conflict, and we're learning so much all the time, that I'd ask the three of you, starting with Sarah, just what part has cyber played in the war in Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. What we're seeing now is a real example of a hybrid war. So we're used to thinking about war as the physical, kinetic war that we get to see on the television. So we see the missiles when it's land, sea, and air. But the cyber element is the invisible element, and that's kind of one of the key areas where we talk about hybrid war. So when we have the kinetic war, we have cyber attacks exactly at the same time. And this is a prime example, particularly when we talk about Ukraine. So as the tanks were rolling in on the 24th of February, actually, the first strikes were the day before, on the 23rd of February. And Microsoft, in particular, detected over 300 simultaneous cyber attacks. And this was really trying to knock out as much as Ukraine's critical infrastructure as quickly as possible.
So, Nigel, what's your thoughts about the war in Ukraine and how cyber is playing a part in it?
Well, I think, I would say yes. Everything that Sarah just said, I agree with. But I think the lesson I'm taking from this is that ultimately cyber plays an ancillary role, a very important role, and in sometimes a vital role. But it's probably its utility is probably in the kind of grey zone area that precedes actual armed conflict, and as Sarah said, in the information warfare domain. Targeting populations around the world and trying to persuade them of the validity of Russia's message. And while that may not be working terribly well in our part of the world, in what they call the global south, it is actually working rather effectively.
We're going to be speaking now to George Dabinski, if technology survives. There he is. Thank you ever so much. He is Ukraine's Deputy Digital Transformation Minister, right on the physical front line and absolutely the virtual front line. Minister, thank you ever so much for joining us here at Big Ideas Live. Can you just give us a sense from your perspective of how cyber is playing a role in this war in your country? How fundamental a role is that?
Good afternoon, Deborah. Thank you for having me. And, I heard just very wise comments from my colleagues, and I share them in general, but I would add a few things. Exactly, cyber became one of the dimensions of this hybrid warfare together with information warfare. So kinetic cyber information constructs this war, and I would say that we have ongoing the first online war because of everyone is able to follow the war through the social media platform. And in more broader context, I would say that it's not only cyber, but I would say that we are talking about some digital security and digital resilience because of, as my colleagues mentioned, we have cyber attacks, very critical component. We experienced more than 1,370 cyber attacks, and cyber incidents, it's more than 65,000.
Sally, what do you make of what the minister just said there about how cyber is, this, you have to defend against it, but of course he's clearly saying you also have to be offensive, and I know you don't like those terms, but so can you just explain to us, what your thoughts are, and also more broadly, how you would describe the cyber threat?
So I think the Minister's comments just reinforced the backdrop to this conversation, which is our society is digitally dependent in everything that we do, from the classroom to the boardroom to the front line. And every decision that we make is derived from information. Whether that information is trusted or not is critical to whether we're competent, and that's whether we're competent as a whole society. So in the context of cyber warfare, yes, cyber is technology, and yes, cyber is IT, but I think it would be deeply dangerous for the debate to stop there, because cyber is completely a human challenge, a deeply human challenge. And therefore, we need to be thinking about how we build national competence, national resilience, and making sure that that competence is across the whole of our society.
Nigel, can you just give your thoughts? We're talking about cyber technology more broadly and the future. How is warfare in the future going to look?
Well, we're back to Clausewitz, the difference between the nature and the character of warfare. As Clausewitz said, the nature of warfare is unchanging, but the character of warfare changes continuously. The other thing to say is, remind ourselves that warfare is a complex adaptive process, and victory normally goes to the side that proves most adaptive. So making predictions, I think, is very difficult, but there are certain things I think we can safely assume. One, as I just said, I think at the end of the day, cyber attacks, I don't like the term cyber warfare, I'm not sure what it means, nor does anybody else, is probably going to be preparatory and ancillary to the main event, which is still going to be a clash of arms. The other thing to think about is the whole challenge of autonomous systems. And the United Nations has got very exercised about this and is looking at the whole question of killer robots. Well, I think we're a long way from that. No serious military thinker or commander that I know about wants to find himself in a situation where artificial intelligence systems or machines are dictating the battle rhythms. And if we look at what's happened in Ukraine, the role of the human being, I think, is still fundamental. Ukrainian forces have defeated a much larger and, on the face of it, better prepared force through the skill of individual commanders, non-commissioned officers on the ground. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to eliminate that from a central role in conflict.
Well, Rishi Sunak, our new Prime Minister, is actually just visiting Ukraine at the moment for the first time. He's been meeting with the President, and he's been saying about how the UK is going to be providing more weapons to help the Ukrainians. What is the biggest assistance that the UK can give Ukraine to help deal with these threats in the cyber domain? Actually, Sally, if I go to you first.
Brain power. So this is a human endeavor. This is about the skills that we need, and it's about different thinking. And if you bring together brilliant people who understand telecommunications networks, devices, logistics supplies, weapons programs, you can then work with those individuals to make their systems more safe. Because if you're an engineer building something, you don't tend to think, I wonder how this can be broken. But that's what our adversaries are doing to us.
Well, it's time now to hear from someone helping to make those decisions about freedom of expression and deciding what content is appropriate. With that, I'm going to hand over to our technology correspondent, Roland Manthorpe.
Thanks, SJ. I'm so delighted to be here with Dex Hunter Turek of the Facebook Meta, I should say, Oversight Board. One of the most interesting and unique experiments in one of the most important areas, the moderation of what we can and can't put online. Dex, welcome.
Good to be here.
Let's just start by helping me understand the principles underlying the Oversight Board.
The way we've looked at it is to make decisions about content for a global set of platforms. Facebook and Instagram have billions of users, around 3 billion. We need to have members on an independent body who represent the huge diversity of that user base. Many different backgrounds, many different communities who can help solve some of those really complex challenges that users are facing every single day on those platforms.
So the question or the topic of oversight boards and content moderation boards has really come up recently because Elon Musk has said that he'd like one for Twitter. You worked for Elon Musk. What advice would you have for him on this topic?
Well, look, I think the first thing I would say when looking at Twitter and how to moderate content there is you have to start with the principle of do no harm. And I mean that in the sense that medical professionals look at patients. When you make decisions here, for platforms like Twitter, which are part of the critical infrastructure of free expression around the world for many millions of people, including activists, people who are struggling for better lives, for democracy in societies facing conflict. The decisions you make in California can be immensely consequential. And so actually making very rapid, knee-jerk decisions about the direction of content, about content policy, that's probably not the right way to go. From the Oversight Board perspective, what we have repeatedly encouraged Meta to do with how they moderate content is to be transparent about how they make decisions, really to show how they've come to a decision so that it builds trust with users. Trust in social media companies and in business, I think, has taken an absolute rollicking over recent years. And certainly, I think it will not be helpful for restoring trust if you have Elon making decisions where people wonder, is this being driven mainly because of Elon's personal preferences? I do think as well, if you're building a content council, it has to genuinely operate independently from the company. It cannot be something that just reflects Elon's personal preferences.
Yeah, because as you referred to, the key decision when Meta set up, or Facebook as it was then, set up the Oversight Board, was that Mark Zuckerberg essentially stepped back and said, you take over this. He didn't actually step back all the way, but he did step back a little bit. I mean, you know Elon Musk, right? Does he have the self-discipline, the self-control? I mean, just does he have the character to take a decision like that?
Yeah, I mean, Elon is somebody who famously describes himself not as a micromanager, but as a nano-manager. He's somebody who often likes to be very involved in things that are quite intricate, and you think other CEOs might not be that invested in that element. Certainly, I think...
That sounds like a no.
I think based on the last couple of weeks, I think it's a couple of weeks, though it seems longer, he is unlikely to be very detached from these decisions. We'll have to see how it unfolds. I mean, I understand that he's probably minded to bring in another CEO to run Twitter so he can go back to focusing on other parts of his business interests, and that would probably be the right way to go. I think Twitter needs a lot of attention, and if Elon's going to be providing that, I wonder who's going to be running the shop at Tesla and SpaceX.
And just to say, is that if the overlord of the company is involved in a project like the Oversight Board, it can't work, can it?
Yeah, I mean, the Oversight Board operates completely independently from the political, the commercial, the public relations interests of Meta. We, frankly, don't care what Mark Zuckerberg thinks about the decisions we make. We are there to advocate for users, to ensure that users are being treated fairly. Elon does not need to be involved. He should not be involved in making those incredibly consequential decisions.
Well, our next panel now is all about artificial intelligence and the question, can AI replace your brain? Hosting this panel, our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire.
Thank you very much, Sarah Jane. We're going to be talking about machines that think. We're going to be looking at questions that have baffled philosophers for thousands of years, the nature of consciousness, and we're going to solve that in about 45 minutes flat, I reckon. So I've got an expert panel to help me do that. Anil Seth, who is the Professor of Cognitive and Computational Neuroscience and the author of Being You, A New Science of Communication. Dr. Catherine Breslin, a machine learning scientist and founder of Kingfisher Labs Consulting, previously worked at Cambridge University, Toshiba Research, and on a little thing called Amazon Alexa, which you might have heard of. And finally, Dr. Chris Bishop, laboratory director at Microsoft Research Cambridge, which I've been a couple of times, and this is treasure trove of very advanced research, and also a member of the UK AI Council. So I think we're in very safe hands here. Thank you all for joining us here. Artificial intelligence, it's strange because it's a term that's been around a long time, but it also seems to refer to something that hasn't quite arrived yet, but it's all around us. We're using it the whole time. And I wonder, Catherine, if you could start us with that. What does AI look like in the world right now?
So I think it's a very good point that AI is a really ill-defined term, and I don't think it has, a real concrete definition of what it is. And so the best I can come up with is computers trying to sort of emulate some sort of human intelligence. And obviously, we're a very long way from, and hopefully we'll get to that question of how close are we to human intelligence. But we're on the path to computers that are becoming more and more intelligent. And I think if we look at some of the ways that technology is used right now in the world, we can see some real good examples of artificial intelligence and how it's used. You mentioned Alexa. Obviously, that is, I think, a very nice example of how AI is working at the moment. And if you have Alexa or you've talked to Siri or any of these other virtual assistants, you might have a sense of how good the technology is. You know, it can listen to you, it can understand certain things, it does a lot of smart stuff behind the scenes. But also, it has some limitations. I'm not going to say that it's solved conversation. And so you get a sense of these sort of limitations and potential if you look at things that are out there in the real world.
What are you most excited by in terms of the applications of AI?
Well, I think we've seen huge advances even just in the last couple of years or so, and it's sort of become ubiquitous. So there are many, many places that AI shows up in our daily lives that we don't know about. I mean, I think Arthur Clarke, the science fiction writer, once said, the best technologies are ones that disappear into the background. They help you in your daily lives. You're not aware of it. So it's just all sorts of things like, opening your phone with your face or translating from one language to another on a website, or just many, many, many examples of this. But I do have a real sense that and I've been in the field for about 35 years. I mean, the field has been called machine learning that I've been in, and rather than artificial intelligence, but it's really machine learning has really become the dominant approach to artificial intelligence. And really just in the last year or two, we've seen just extraordinary advances to the point where I think the next few years in particular will see some very rapid changes.
Consciousness is not the same thing as intelligence, and I think this is a crucial distinction to make. Because it's so often said, not by anyone here, of course, but in the wider public, that consciousness is some function of intelligence. That once AI crosses some threshold, then the lights come on. And it's not only going to be smart, it's going to be sentient. But I think this comes from a place of human exceptionalism. We think we're really special as humans. We think we're intelligent and we know we're conscious, so we think the things go together. But consciousness, we should define it, actually. I mean, consciousness is really any kind of experience whatsoever. It feels like something to be a conscious system. An experience of pain or of seeing color is enough. You don't have to have complex cognition going on in order to be conscious. So there's no real good reason to expect that simply ratcheting up intelligence is going to make an AI system conscious. And just by observing apparently intelligent behavior, I don't think it's a reliable signature of whether the thing is conscious. And I think we can be misled here. Systems can give us a strong intuition that there's a conscious mind there when there's just the whirring of algorithms.
Why do you think we have this obsession with wanting to have conscious machines? As Sarah Jane was saying, it's such a trope of science fiction. Some brilliant films about it, some bad films about it as well. It's something we clearly feel the need to see in the world. Why is that, Catherine?
I think you're right. It is a trope of science fiction, and we want to emulate ourselves somehow in what we do. And so people are driven to build replicas of people, build technology which is like us. But if you look back over time, you see that it's been a constant thread through the history of technology that people have wanted to assign human agency to technology, even to other inanimate objects. You'll hear people talking about how their TV is annoyed with them or something like that. We assign human properties to technology into other things. There's a famous example of a chatbot which was built back in the 60s called Eliza, which was a very simple chatbot. It was a therapist. It had some canned answers, so you tell it your problem, and it might say, can you tell me more about that? Or sometimes it would flip your question back on you, so you might say, I'm feeling unhappy, and it would say, can you tell me why you're feeling unhappy? Very simple responses. And the creator of this program wanted to show how stupid computers were, but people did believe that Eliza had human-like intelligence, and the creator was very surprised by this, that he could
have the opposite effect.
Had the opposite effect. And I think that this trend has sort of carried on through. People are really keen to assign human properties to computers, especially when they're using language and other human-like animations and that sort of thing.
This question of why do we feel like this is something we need in our world, in our lives, I think really does need to be interrogated. Because just as much as we don't know what it would take to build a machine that has experience, we also don't know what it wouldn't take. We might do it by accident, and we might not know if we've done it. And if this happens, it would be an ethical catastrophe, because soon as something can have experience, we have an ethical obligation to it to minimize its potential suffering. And if we don't even know the criteria by which to establish whether that's even a possibility, we're in really, really deep waters. So just building something because it sounds cool and you've seen it in science fiction and you want to be at the cutting edge of this pivotal moment in human history is a really, really terrible idea. So I think that these goals of building actually conscious AI are just wrong. We should not be trying to do that.
Thank you so much, all the panelists. I think we solved everything. We got there in 45 minutes or less. Thank you very much for being here and for watching along at home and sending in all those questions. And there's plenty more to come here at Big Ideas Live.
Take a look at this. The UK Atomic Energy Authority are here with us. And this is their four-legged friend. It's Spot the dog. Not the Spot the dog we're used to, but this is the future. The UK's Atomic Energy Authority says that this four-legged robot can go where humans cannot. And we're going to take Spot for a little walk. It's created a lot of interest with our audience here in the room. And we're going to bring Spot to you at home. Joining me, Sunshi Chen from the UK AEA. Sunshi, talk to me about Spot. I mean, he's drawn a lot of attention. He can walk up the stairs. Talk to me about the technology behind him.
So we actually use Spot for inspection purposes. Like you said, we use Spot to go places where people can't. So places that are potentially hazardous for humans. They might have high radiation. They might have latent heat. And Spot has cameras on the front, infrared cameras, just normal visual cameras, to give us an overview of these environments so that we know what's going on. And it's technology like this that we can apply to fusion energy.
Yes, so talk to me about fusion energy, because this is the friendly face. This is the cute fun bit that draws people in, but the energy that goes into this technology is the serious business.
Exactly. So in a sentence, it's a sun in a bottle. What we're trying to do is recreate the process that the sun uses, fusion, to create energy here on Earth. We call these things, fusion machines, and we want to make them to basically create, sustainable, low carbon, and secure energy. This type of energy technology is a very efficient technology, very secure technology, and very safe. And it's going to be part of the energy mix in the latter half of the century to provide energy security for everybody.
Yeah, you mentioned all the right words there: clean, renewable, and security energy. We've been talking about so much about that so far this year. Just a final question from you, Sunshi, if I can, a personal one. I mean, obviously, how did you get into tech and science? Because, we've got younger members of the audience here today and are watching at home or on the move, wherever they are today. And this could be the hook that gets them into science and tech. What was your journey into this field?
So I always liked science, even as a small kid, and then I went into university. And I did do a nuclear-specific degree, but that's not necessary to get into this kind of technology or into science at all. If you have an interest in science, that's enough. And then I joined onto the graduate scheme here at the UK AEA, which is brilliant. We really value trying to bring up our younger engineers, which is vital to a rapidly growing and a rapidly changing industry that is fusion.
One of the really big challenges for the future is climate change, of course, and how we can get people to eat less meat. Now, the government's climate advisors say we need to reduce meat consumption by around a third, and that's a lot. One of the companies here is called Redefine Meat. This is a plant-based product, and as you can see, it looks pretty convincingly like meat. And what's quite unique about this is that it's 3D printed. And we're joined by Edwin, who's the Senior Vice President of the company. How do you make 3D printed meat?
Yeah, so actually what you're seeing here is the fruit of 4 years of hard work, a collaboration with chefs, with butchers, meat experts and food scientists. And we use 3D printing technology because it has several benefits. One of them is that you can basically produce layer by layer, voxel by voxel, fat, blood and muscle to replicate the very complex structure of meat. 1 kilogram of meat costs 25 kilograms of soy. So it's an extremely inefficient way to convert the same ingredients that we use in our products, namely soy and pea and chickpea and wheat, into meat. Basically, what we can do is produce 1 cow a day, whereas normally a cow would have to live for 2, 3, 4 years.
Let's give it a go. Daniel, you've got something there for me to try just before we have to move on. What's this one?
This is the flank steak.
This is the flank steak. Let's just try with my fingers. It's a bit mucky, but just for the space of time. It does taste like meat. Doesn't quite have the same fibrous texture, but it's pretty close.
Well, you should actually then try also the tenderloin,
Just very, very quickly.
which is a very different texture too.
Not really the time of day to do this, but... Now, lots of companies are trying to reproduce this mouthfeel of meat. Very difficult to do. But by using technology, this company, for one, believes that they can do it.
Thanks all of you for joining us here, and those of us who are joining us remotely. I hope it's going to be interesting. We have got a stellar panel here to explore the question of, can the UK become a science superpower? On my immediate right, my left, your right, Daniel Korski, CEO of Public, former special advisor to David Cameron, I understand, on these sorts of issues. And Public is a venture capital firm focused on helping technology startups transform public services. Next, we have Sir Mark Walpole, former chief government science advisor, so he knows a fair amount about how politicians think about science, and I'm hoping he will share some of those secrets with us. Before that, he was head of the UKRI, which is the body that decides how to distribute our R&D budget to the right kind of scientists in the right way. And last but not least at all, Zoe McDougall from Oxford Nanopore. Now, if you haven't heard of them, Nanopore makes scalable DNA and RNA sequencing devices for research, biodefense, water testing, agriculture, all sorts of medicine, you name it, pretty much. Before we delve into this question, though, I thought we'd just take a quick listen to our new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, what he had to say in his budget speech on Thursday about the UK's science and technology position.
I want to combine our technology and science brilliance with our formidable financial services to turn Britain into the world's next Silicon Valley. I want to go further, so today I protect our entire research budget and confirm that we'll increase public funding for R&E to 20 billion by 24-25 as part of our mission to make the United Kingdom a science superpower.
We'll get into the wording of that statement in a second because it's slightly misleading in my opinion, but we'll discuss that further. But I thought I'd just start by asking all of you guys, starting with you, Dan, can the UK become a science superpower, or is it already?
I think it's fair to say, if we've got to stick to the language of international politics, that we may not be a superpower, but we're sort of a rising power. You know, we've got a lot of the basics, right? We've got lots of great companies. Nanopore is, of course, one fantastic example. We've got a big investment sector that's willing to pour money into it. But the truth is also, we haven't quite done all the things that we need to do in order to build up our arsenal. We haven't been spending enough on R&D. We don't have enough people studying various STEM subjects. And frankly, funding isn't really what it is in the US if we had to compare ourselves. So we can get there, but there's still work to be done. And the budget we've seen has taken some steps forward and a few steps backwards. So we'll see over the next coming period.
Mark, science superpower?
Well, I mean, the first thing is it's good news that that is a government aim. It's really important. And it really matters for the future of the country because we're going through an industrial revolution, amazing new technologies, amazing new businesses, and we've got all the challenges of climate, demographic change. So we need to be. We're extraordinarily good at research. There's no question about that. Do we exploit it most effectively? Probably not yet. And the money is really important, but also the environment in which researchers and innovators work. That's really important. You know, can we continue to bring the best people from overseas? That's a really important test. So I think, you know, it's all good news, but there is a huge amount to do.
Yeah, I want to get into the money and those other issues in just a second. Zoe, superpower or not?
We are the centre of some of the most extraordinary science and innovation, and I think we can talk about academia, but we can also talk about industrial R&D, which is a huge focus in this country. And we are amazing at spin-outs. You've obviously funded many of them, but we're not so good at scale-up. And the Life Sciences Industrial Strategy that was published about 3 years ago said we, the UK, should have, in the next few years, at least four companies worth £20 billion. We're not quite there yet. Our scale-up ambitions really have to be bigger as a country.
The government has protected the R&D budget. Jeremy Hunt there in the Commons saying he'd raised it by $20 billion, £20 billion, sorry. In fact, that was the pre-existing commitment. They've maintained science funding. But this is, in effect, a doubling of where we were before. So are we spending enough? I thought I'd start with you, Mark.
Well, I mean, what's the right amount to spend on research and development? We are, if you look at it as a percentage of GDP, we're still not in the forefront. Yeah. So we are perhaps about at 2.4% at the moment, if you take into account the recent ONS calculations. US, Germany, Korea, we're at 3% in 2020. Yeah. So it's good, it's heading in the right direction, but it doesn't put us by any means amongst the world leaders.
The name of this whole event is Who Owns the Future? And I thought I'd put that to you in just a quick thought, if you could. Zoe, perhaps starting with you.
We've got such a firm opinion on this. So you have challenges across the world that genomics can answer. It's health challenges, it's environmental challenges, food security challenges. 30% of the food that is produced goes to waste because of pathogens and pests in the world. Extraordinary. And those problems are experienced by the people who are not where the innovation is happening. So we want to make our technology, we want to tear down those barriers so the people who have the challenges are the people who are creating the solutions for those problems. So I guess our answer to that was we think the future belongs to the people with the problems to solve so that they can drive the solving of those problems.
I mean, you own the future in the sense that it has never been easier than today to define a problem and build solutions, attract people to help you, money to support you, and access the architecture you need to build something, whether that's software architecture or more physical architecture, and then access markets immediately beyond you or further afield. It has never been easier, never been easier. So the future belongs to you, but the great news is that you have the levers at your disposal to do something about it in a way no previous generation had as easily.
Hello, welcome back to Big Ideas Live. We're here in our innovation section. You're looking at the future of fitness, not me, not my reflection, but that lady there. This is Echelon Fitness. They've been displaying their fitness mirror. It really is incredible what's been going on here. We've got 3D printers over there to my left. Sorry, people are filming these. This is how technological it is. You're filming me, they're filming me. There's lots of machines around, but there's a 3D printer there that scientists are using to print organs that actually help help neurosurgeons and other surgeons practice on organs. We've got dating VR here. We've got two people having a go. I'm not sure if they're dating each other. I'm not sure. Maybe we can find out afterwards. This is very much a futuristic blind date, but that's the future of dating. And we've got so much going on here. But now it is time to talk about the global space race. Yes, space is back. It's back in the news. There is so much happening. NASA is hoping to send astronauts back to the moon by 2026. Here in Britain, the first spaceport in Cornwall, that received the green light, and we could see rockets launch from there possibly by the end of this month. And of course, there are all the billionaires in the business world of space, making money out of space, space tourism, the likes of Elon Musk. We've heard a little bit about him today. Jeff Bezos as well, and Sir Richard Branson, all planning on sending tourists into orbit on a regular basis in the very near future. So, as I said, space is back.
And liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket.
And liftoff of S-32, go Falcon 9.
3, 2...
6 decades of the space race have left more than 9,000 tons of debris in orbit.
Go, Jeff, go, Mark, go, Wally, go, Oliver. You are going to space.
Virgin Galactic and SpaceX release huge amounts of carbon dioxide too, all to give the privileged few a taste of weightlessness and a spectacular view of the planet.
If we can do this, just imagine what you can do. Hey!
Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
Let's talk all things space. Leading this panel for us, our science correspondent, Thomas Moore.
Sarah Jane, thank you so much. Oh, my word, looking at those images, don't you just want to go to space? Wow, I would love to do it. Look, I mean, the space race is so different now. It used to be a two-horse race between the United States and the Soviet Union. Now there's a long list of spacefaring nations and companies. It's not just about the flag planting anymore. It's about the science, there's money to be made, and our everyday lives are being affected by what's going on in space. Our lives depend on it. So to discuss the how and the why, I'm joined by an expert panel. We've got Melissa Thorpe, the boss of Spaceport Cornwall, now just days away from launching a rocket from the runway of Newquay Airport. We've got Lord Rees, Martin Rees, a world-renowned cosmologist, and the Astronomer Royal, a post, I read, created by Charles II, no less, to map the night sky. And is it true you get £100 a year still?
Don't even get that.
You don't even get that? Well, bad luck.
No.
I think you go and demand it. And also, from New Mexico, we're joined by Mike Moses. There we are, Mike, with the Unity in the background there, your mothership. He is president of Virgin Galactic, who's on a countdown to the company's first commercial flights for space tourists early next year. Fingers crossed, Mike. And we'll also be going live shortly to a NASA astronaut, and that's going to be really exciting. Melissa, let's start with you. I mean, goodness me, it's exciting to think a rocket launch from the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it is still a bit surreal. 8 years ago, we used to get laughed at, but who's laughing now? We're very close to launching for the first time ever from UK soil, from Cornwall. And it's just been such a roller coaster ride. But it's all coming to fruition now down in Cornwall. And we're really just proud of what this is about to do for the UK.
But let's be clear, this isn't a NASA-style vertical launch to space. You've got some other idea. Tell us about what you're going to be doing down in Newquay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working with Virgin Orbit. So Mike's with Virgin Galactic. We're with Virgin Orbit.
We're not being sponsored by Virgin. That's a complete coincidence.
I don't represent them, but our spaceport is launching our first launch with them. And that basically uses a Boeing 747 that's been modified to carry a giant 70-foot, two-stage rocket under one of its wings. Basically, what it will do is go up partway to space, where it deploys that rocket midair, and that rocket goes into space.
Let me just challenge you on the value of sending human scientists to Mars. The robots, the rovers, are fantastic, but it does need some human operator back here to help decide which rocks to head for, and they're doing that on the basis of a two-dimensional screen. Isn't it not better to send a human who can walk the dust, tap the rocks, decide where to drill?
Yes. Well, that's certainly true today. The Perseverance vehicle on Mars has enough AI to be able to work its way around obstacles and all that, but it can't do the geology. But I would argue that long before we think of sending people to Mars, which will be 20 years from now, the AI will be able to do the geology too, just as well as a human, and of course at vastly less cost.
Mike, in New Mexico, and it's space tourists for now in near-Earth orbit. Do you have ambitions to, or not yet in orbit, do you have ambitions to go into orbit and perhaps even beyond?
Yeah, sure. I think, with due respect to the Astronomer Royal, the exploration by robots is definitely a less risky thing. But I think you really diminish the experience feedback. The question I always got when I was at NASA and here at Virgin Galactic, why do we send people to space? And I think at the heart of it, there's a fundamental human nature. And while it is risky and expensive, it is very noble and it gives inspiration and a real purpose. And so, here at Virgin Galactic, we're going to try to let a lot of folks go to suborbit and be able to see the Earth and experience space travel in just a small slice.
Let's bring in the professional. This is Nicole Stott, former NASA astronaut, 2 space flights, 104 days in space, 1 spacewalk, and a spectacular spacesuit there in the background, Nicole. What's going on?
Well, nice to be here, and I appreciate hearing all the comments from everyone. And the spacesuit behind me is part of, its name is Exploration. It's part of a program we do at the Space for Art Foundation, working with kids all over the world, uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art.
And I was thinking about this week, now that our Artemis program is underway, we're going back to the moon, which is really exciting. But those images taken by Orion looking back at our tiny, fragile blue marble against that black curtain of space. I mean, those kinds of images taken by the Apollo astronauts really helped to give birth to the environmental movement back in the 60s and 70s. It is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely believe it. I mean, like Martin said too, I have these vivid memories of watching, Neil and Buzz walking on the moon, knowing that Mike Collins was orbiting it, and going outside and looking at the moon and being, even at 7 years old, understanding that that was a really extraordinary thing.
What would you give to be on the rocket to the moon and walk there one day? As, let's face it, no woman has walked on the moon yet.
I would absolutely love to walk on the moon. I look forward at least to living vicariously through my friends and others that will, and knowing that by establishing our presence there, in a more permanent sense, settling there in a permanent way, will allow us to take advantage, and I say that in a positive way, of the resources available on the moon, for us to lift some of the industry that we have on Earth off the planet and into space, all for the benefit of life on Earth.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for joining us. Our panel here, experts, giving us some sense of excitement about the future of space.
Thomas, thank you, and to our panel. I really mean it when that was out of this world. Thank you. Everybody thoroughly enjoyed that. That was our final session of Big Ideas Live. I'm going to invite Spot back onto the stage. An encore for Spot, because I did ask the key question in our interview earlier, Spot, which is whether you can dance. Apparently he can. For those of you who are staying with us, there's our Meet the Correspondent session in the innovation area at the back. But for Big Ideas Live, that's it for now. We'll see you next time. Take it away, Spot.